and welcome to the NewsX Sunday Guardian Roundtable. Well, we are here. The festival season is almost upon us, but so is the COVID. There is no sign of the virus letting up, but perhaps there is good news around the corner. We've been hearing about various stages of trials of vaccines. There are, in fact, we are told as many as, according to WHO figures, as many as 154 vaccines that are, in play, out of which I think about 144 are in the clinical trials phases. And 11 of them have reached the late stage testing also. What does this all mean? And also, where are we with the infection? At the end of the day, you've seen the figures, it's just not letting up. So where does India stand? And of course, is there any good news around the corner? Joining me on the roundtable is Dr. Atul Kakkar. He is the Vice Chairman of the Department of Internal Medicine at the Sri Gangaram Hospital in Delhi. We have Dr. Monica Mahajan. She's a Director of Internal Medicine at Max Healthcare, also from Delhi. We have Anil Hebbar. He is a Chief Functionary. He's a social activist. He's a Chief Functionary at the Helping Hands Charitable Trust. But more to the point of this show, Anil is a volunteer for the Covishield vaccine, which is being made by the Serum Institute in India. This, as you know, is the same as the Oxford vaccine licensed to AstraZeneca, who have, of course, tied up with the Serum Institute for the help in the manufacturing over here in India. And we have Shambhavi Nayak. She's a research fellow at the Takshila Institute. The Takshila Institute has released a vaccine deployment strategy for India. So we're trying to cover all ends, really, from the cures to the prevention to the marketing of the vaccine to the distribution of the vaccine, rather. But Dr. Atul Kakkar, welcome back to the show. You've been updating us constantly as to how it is. Can you tell us how bad is this or good is the situation? Festival season around the corner, as I said.
So if you see, the numbers are still increasing. The hospitals are still full. Although there was in between a little stationary phase where the number of patients were less, but still right now they are increasing a lot.
They're increasing a lot. And have you had cases of reinfection? That's the worrying concern, Dr. Kakkar.
Yeah, so we've had at least 2 cases of reinfection, and one was a staff nurse in which we have shown that. But obviously, we require gene sequencing to be done to prove that it is a case of reinfection. That's just not possible in our setup. The other case also has been recently seen where we suspected basically a reinfection. Again, because of, the gene sequencing not available. So we just can't label it as this thing. But yeah, both cases were symptomatic.
Okay. Dr. Mahajan, do you generally agree with Dr. Kakkar that the situation is, we're hearing statistics that, first of all, can you explain, is it a first wave, second wave? I'm very confused as to where we are at, and is it improving or not improving?
The bad news is that it's definitely not improving, because there was a momentary phase where the numbers went down. But if you look at the data in the last few days, there is a major surge in the number of cases that has happened. And I think there is a kind of a pandemic fatigue which is setting in. People have now given up. They are no longer as conscious in terms of their efforts about wearing the mask or social distancing or hand washing. So there's an inertia or a fatigue that has set in. And with the festival season around the corner, the wedding season and winters setting in, the numbers are majorly rising. So in India, we can't really define as to where the first wave is ending and where the second wave is starting, because in Europe and in America, you have definite wave patterns that have been seen. But if you look at the Indian graph, there is no wave pattern that is quite discernible in terms of where the first wave and the second wave are heading. We don't seem to have any drop in the numbers happening as of now. So there is a major concern with the winters and the festivities both.
Okay, well, Anil, do you have some good news for us amidst all this? You've been, can you just tell us a bit about how you got onto this program and at what stage are you, how many shots have you had of the vaccine? Just update us on what's happening.
I'm in the phase 2, phase 3 trial for the Covishield vaccine. And the phase 2 is now the trial in which I'm in is for looking at the side effects, possible side effects of the vaccine, and then the phase 3 will be for the antibodies, the buildup of the antibodies. So I'm in the phase 2. And I took my first shot on the 8th of October. and I'm about to take my second on the 4th of November. Whether good news or bad news, I'm not the one to say that. I think it's right now it's bad. We think the figures are going down, but I have a feeling that's because most of the people have been infected, so the figures are tending to show down.
But tell us a bit, when you were signed up for this program, were you told, are there any side effects? Are there any, downside? And what are the symptoms that you are feeling, once you took the shot?
Yeah, no, we were told everything. For the first 20 minutes when we went there, we were explained as to what the trial is and what could be the possible side effects. We were also told about 2 cases in the UK where the people had complete paralysis of the spine and things like that. But then it could not be proven as being linked to the vaccine. So the trial, after a week's break, proceeded again. And then now we have also heard of a couple of cases in the US where the J&J and the Eli Lilly vaccines have also been, the trials have been halted before the same reason. But then there's no link proven to the vaccine, so it didn't bother me much when that was told. Otherwise, they said there would be some slight amount of fever possible out of 55 people who had been vaccinated before me. About 3 had some fever, 1 day's fever. So we were advised to take paracetamol once in 6 hours, 100,000 mg, and that was it. I didn't get any
symptoms
fever.
they've told you to watch out for?
Some sort of feverishness, nothing apart from that. So I don't think I felt feverish, but of course I was feeling a little tired towards the end of the day. The first 3 or 4 days. After that, there was nothing.
And when will this when does it end?
The trial ends in 6 months from the day of the first shot. So it's a 6-month trial. So the second one is on the 4th of November, and then 5 more months I'll have to go for follow-ups. So it'll end by March or so.
So Dr. Kakkad, going by this calendar, it's still March, literally that one can usually, and that also is fast because, you know better than me that vaccines take years to develop. Here we fast forwarded the whole process really within, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, one literally overlapping the other. So how worried are you of that this vaccine will be a sure shot, or do you think the first generation of vaccine will be a hit and miss and then we'll keep refining and fine tuning it?
So I strongly feel, that it's a fast track of the vaccine, the phases which has been gone like that. Mm-hmm. And the phase 1 and 2, they happen very quickly. Now, phase 3 is the, phase where we need to see the safety and efficacy, both things. They have to be done very properly and thoroughly so that, after that, it comes to the market. So that needs to be done properly. In fact, there was a vaccine which was developed in Russia where they found that it's not fit to go to the phase 3 right now. So that was a problem. But perhaps before that, I am very optimistic that at least almost 60 to 70% of our population would be exposed either clinically or subclinically, and we would develop a herd immunity. So that will be a major thing, in case that happens. Because the last, the report which was there available from Delhi, close to almost 33% of the population already had the antibodies, positive. So that was,
I think, last month in September.
In September, yeah. So every 3 months they're going to do it. So let's wait for the other, just to see what is the number now. And if we can, have this kind of an antibody developed because of either clinical or subclinical infection, that perhaps will be the one of the ways before the vaccine come in, so that some type of a herd immunity is already there with us.
But how do you explain this herd immunity with the fact that people are getting the infection again, Dr. Kakkad?
So it's difficult to explain that, but the antibody, it's a new disease. We are all learning new things. The antibody level, if you keep measuring, in fact we are doing now a lot of research on this by the national board students which we have. It's just a roller coaster. The antibodies, they go up and go down, and that's the thing we are finding. So it's not, something which is constant, which has been explained in literature, but also at the same time, we are not sure how the antibodies will behave after a little while. So that's the thing.
Okay. Dr. Mahajan, you heard Anil tell us about, what the symptoms that he's feeling. Do you think it's normal that, he doesn't feel temperature? What exactly happens in this phases of the vaccine trials? If you can just break it down for us.
Okay. So for any vaccine to develop, you need at least 10 to 15 years of clinical data before we talk about the safety and efficacy of a vaccine. So this is really a fast track process that is going on. And for any vaccine, you have 3 clinical phases of trial. So phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. The phase 1 and phase 2 data are mainly in terms of looking at the safety data, whereas the most important phase is the phase 3 clinical trial. And as per the National Regulatory Authority, as well as in terms of the FDA, what they have asked for the COVID vaccine is that it should have at least a 50% efficacy. So in layman term, 50% efficacy means that if 100 people receive the vaccine, at least 50 should develop sufficient antibodies or an immune response, which is called as the immunogenicity of the vaccine, or how much is the efficacy of the vaccine. The other arm of the trial is in terms of the safety data of the vaccine, which means there can be 2 types of responses. One is in terms of reactogenicity, which means that they're mild reactions. What Anil is describing in terms of mild reactions could be just in terms of body ache, fever, a mild flu-like illness, which may not happen in all the volunteers, but some percentage of volunteers may have mild reaction when the vaccine is administered. And the third most important is in terms of the serious adverse events. So what happened in the Chadox vaccine or the Oxford vaccine, which is what Anil is part of in terms of AstraZeneca and the Serum Institute, the major adverse events were in terms of the 2 events which happened in terms of the nerve-related complications or myelitis-related complications in some of the volunteers in September. And then there was one case in Brazil which was not confirmed to be related to the vaccine, and AstraZeneca said that that particular death in Brazil was not related to the vaccine. So the 3 terms that we are looking at in any vaccine is immunogenicity, which means how efficacious that vaccine is in terms of protecting the general public, mild reactions in terms of when the vaccine is administered, and lastly, in terms of the serious adverse events, if anything major happens in terms of a serious illness or a fatality in a person who receives the vaccine. So for any vaccine to be approved, both by the Indian Regulatory Authority as well as by the FDA, they have demanded that at least the efficacy of the vaccine should be 50% when they do an analysis of the phase 3 clinical trials. And for the safety data, they are also incorporating the phase 1 and phase 2 data, which is what Anil has been a part of. So we are looking at 3 parameters: efficacy, reactions or reactogenicity, and in terms of serious adverse events.
Shambhavi, you've been listening to all this very patiently. Now we come to your part. What is this plan that you have prepared? And we've been reading, of course, in the media that they're planning to use election machinery the way they hold elections to distribute, at every booth level. Is something like that? Are you looking at something like that?
Yes, I mean that's part of the plan. What we have envisioned is that this is not going to be a one-time process. We can't have a single strategy for the next year to vaccinate everybody. This has to be done temporarily, because at least initially we know that the demand for the vaccine is going to be too high and the supply won't be able to match that demand. So we'll have to first have some sort of prioritization strategy on who gets the vaccine. India has to ramp up securing vaccine supply to keep a pace with the demand. And I think our broad aim is that India should vaccinate roughly 80% of the population by December 2021. It's an ambitious plan, but it's a plan that we think is necessary for the economic revival in a post-COVID era.
Okay. Dr. Kakkad, are you, you've been following the vaccine trials. Do you think, where do you feel that, or will there be like different sets of vaccines for different countries and different age groups and different, demographics?
So ideally, the vaccine should be single shot, and also it should be it could be given to the high risk population as well as the normal population. So high risk will be, patients who are diabetic and extreme ages which are taken. And so ideally it should be like that. So we are, very early, we have very little information, or very, very early about the information about this kind of a thing which is going on. But I think very soon we'll be able to know exactly what's going on in the vaccine front also. The other thing is that once the vaccine is available, it should be given to the high-risk individual. That's for definite. But how it will be given, it's very difficult, because the government should have now a clear strategy about the distribution. Whether it's going to distribute to only, some people say that it will be given to only the army persons, and some were saying that it will be given only to, doctors or healthcare workers. So all this has to be set now. You can't just work once the vaccine is there. So all this homework needs to be done right now.
Has this homework been done, Shambhavi? Who is in the priority sector?
Right. So from the reports that we are getting from the government, it seems that healthcare workers and other frontline workers would be the first to get the vaccine. But obviously, those are still reports. We need to get some sort of official documentation out. But I think frontline workers would be the priority target. That's something that we also recommended in the strategy that Takshashila Institution has released. And there's 4 reasons why we thought that the essentials first approach makes sense. The first is that we need an identifiable target. So when we say that frontline workers, we know who they are, we know who needs to be vaccinated. We know the clinical trials are looking at a certain age group. And so the other priority for us is that the vaccine has to be demonstrated to work in the target population, right, in the first phase at least. The third was that we did not want to discriminate against anybody on a social or economic basis. And the fourth was that there are positive externalities with vaccinating frontline workers, because that would mean that essential services and definitely medical interventions, healthcare services will continue running to cope with both the COVID-19 spread and other diseases which have kind of been sidelined over the past 7 to 8 months.
Okay, Anil, can you tell us a bit more about how many of you got onto this program? How did this, how did you hear of it? And is there a specific age group they are looking at also, or are they looking at all the demographics?
Yeah, they're looking at an age group of 18 to 70. Though in Europe and US, I think they had done it up to 55 years. Here they have relaxed it a bit, and they're doing it up to 70 years of age. I came to know through a friend of mine who lives in Pune, and I got a call one day saying that they need about 100 people for the trial, and they've done about 50 or so, and it's a little difficult to get people. Would you mind volunteering? So I said, okay. So next day I went there, and then they first told me that you'll have to undergo an RT-PCR and antibody test because you should not have been infected before. So I went through those tests, and the sugar and BP should be normal, in which case you can be a volunteer. So mine, I went on the 6th for this test. On 7th evening, I got a call saying I've gone through all the parameters, and then I qualify, and 8th morning I got the vaccine. Or the placebo, or whatever it is, or the placebo. I don't know what it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to take a short break and come back and also talk a bit more about post-COVID complications, as to what to, you may have recovered from the virus, but then is your recovery full, or is there something else that you need to be worried about? Stay with us after a short break.
पेश है नया Dulux Ambience. Colors, finishes और special effects. Personalize your world.
कल्याण ज्वेलर्स के हर स्टोर में कैरेट एनालाइजर मशीन है। आपका गहना जो है वो ले करके मशीन में रख देंगे, और मशीन जो है वो गोल्ड की यानी सोने की स्किन प्योरिटी बता देगी। तो आपकी आंखों के सामने आपके गहने को पिघला करके मशीन पर रख देंगे। प्योरिटी का सटीक पता लग जाएगा। नो लुका छुपी, फुल ट्रांसपेरेंसी।
अरे शर्मा जी, आपके घर में लाइट कैसे?
जैगुआर प्राइमा है ना?
जैगुआर प्राइमा करो फिट, घर को रखो हमेशा लेट। अब हर प्राइमा बल्ब के साथ ट्रिपल ए निपो बैटरी बिल्कुल फ्री। आज ही खरीदिए अपना जैगुआर प्राइमा।
welcome back to the NewsX Sunday Garden Roundtable. We are taking a look at what is the news on the COVID vaccine and also an update on the virus itself. Dr. Kakkad, something about the post-COVID complications. People recover, but what are the things that one should look out for? What can you tell our viewers?
So the post-COVID, there are symptoms which are persisting. In fact, there's been a study where they've seen that all the 18 cardinal symptoms, almost close to 80% of the patients in US had these symptoms which are persisting for almost 2 months or so. So we're also doing now, following up these kind of patients. The commonest symptom which these patients, they complain is called fatigue. And the other symptoms are myalgia, which is aches and pains in the muscles. There is low-grade fever, which is persisting. There is the other spectrum, which we are also seeing, is the requirement of oxygen. They have lung fibrosis. The other organs can also be involved, including the nervous system, where they have tingling, numbness, all these paresthesia, which are persisting. The heart symptoms can persist. They can have shortness of breath because of the heart involvement. The heart, it gets dilated. Besides this, many other things also can happen. The thrombosis can happen for long, the clotting in the veins can happen, and all these kind of symptoms. And there are lots of hospitals now, they've opened up these post-COVID care clinics, to take care of these kind of symptoms which are coming now.
Monica, would you like to add to the post-COVID symptoms that you are seeing?
Well, just to add to what Dr. Kakkad has already said, apart from the physical symptoms that people are experiencing, there is a lot of mental challenge that has been noticed in post-COVID patients, because ranging from mild anxiety to severe depression to sleep-related problems, I think it's created a havoc in the minds of people who've recovered from COVID, because they've, especially the ones who've been hospitalized, have seen death at such close quarters that they have kind of seen their life in a kind of a flashback situation, and their whole approach towards life has changed, and they are much more anxious. They can be paranoid. They can have major sleep and anxiety and depression related challenges, memory related issues, what is being labeled as brain fog and not being able to concentrate on work. So the physical aspect and the mental aspect both is being seen in post-COVID patients.
Is the mental aspect a reaction to some of the medication that is being given, because very strong steroids and other strong medicine is also given, or is it something more psychological?
I think it's not really related to the medication, because the medication is being administered for a very short duration of time. Had it been administered for long periods in terms of months and months of medication, we could have blamed it on the medication. It's more in terms of the phobia, because we are dealing with an unknown enemy. People don't know how they will react to that enemy. And once they've seen this disease at close quarters, and now that they are hearing about post-COVID complications, that, oh, my lungs can get fibrosed, I can have cardiac problems, and I can have a reinfection. So that phobia that sets into the mind of the people is multiplying their physical symptoms by many-fold. So it's not just the physical symptoms, but also the psychological trauma that is increasing the physical symptoms to a major extent.
And speaking of phobia, Anil, how do people react when you tell them that you are undertaking this trial? Are they worried? What is the reaction that you get from people?
There's so much of ignorance among people. They think I've done some heroic thing by taking a vaccine, and many of them are under the impression
that
it's
a commendable thing that you've done.
No, but they think that after I've taken the vaccine, I will get COVID, and so many of them are asking me whether I'm hospitalized and how many days did I have. I said, no, you will not get COVID. It's just a mild fever that you might get at best. So that's what. There's a lot of wrong conception.
Do people think that you are infectious just because you have the vaccine? Do they stay away from you? Is that also
no, that's not happened. That's not happened.
Thank God. Dr. Kakkad, we were talking about the medications that are there. I remember you and I have been discussing. Are we still on the same plan of remdesivir, steroids, paracetamol for the early signs? Anything else you'd like to share?
Yeah, so we need to divide the patients into mild, moderate, severe. Mild patients are those whom we take care at home. They are the home quarantine. In those patients, we just use paracetamol with some vitamins, that's all. So moderate patients or severe patients are hospitalized. In those patients, we can think of giving remdesivir or steroids. But a major problem which we are facing now, I think Dr. Monica also will be, facing this, is that people are starting steroids at home, and we are having lots of complications because of that. There is in this era which is called infodemics, where the information is just blasting, and there's a wrong information which is just spreading through the internet and through the WhatsApp group. People are saying that the steroids are very useful. We've seen side effects with steroids, so that is one area which the steroid should be reserved for patients who are admitted in the hospital or who have got low oxygen saturation, or they have some lung signs. Otherwise we should not be doing that at home, and if we are doing it, then it should be under medical supervision. The other things which we're still using in the hospital are plasma therapy, although there have been some trials which say that, it doesn't work. The other is the IL-6 inhibitors, which we're still using. So those are the medicines which we do use in patients who are hospitalized.
That is. Dr. Monica, anything that you need to add to this, the treatment process, if you can?
I think what's important is to warn the patients that one size does not fit all. So one prescription put on the social media is not meant for the general public to be following it. Each patient has to be individualized in terms of, one, the severity of the disease as to mild, moderate, and severe. Look at the comorbidities of the patient, whether he's diabetic, hypertensive, or any other underlying diseases. Look at the age of the patient. So don't go by what the information on the social media is being flooded with, because you're going to cause more harm to yourself by taking the wrong medication like steroids or baby aspirin or other medication, which are really not indicated in every class of patients. So let the doctor make that decision for you. Majority of the patients actually don't need to be hospitalized. They can be very well supervised at home. But at the same time, starting treatment blindly without the doctor's recommendation is definitely going to land up in complications. So not recommended at all.
And one last question, Monica, is there any age group that is more vulnerable, or do you see children getting it less? Young kids are not so, are there fewer cases of young kids, say, preteens getting COVID, and is there an age bracket I can?
See, children do get COVID as much as the adults do, but the good news about the children is that most of them are either asymptomatic or they have very mild disease which self-recovers, and they hardly would need any medication except for some stray cases in pediatric age group who do need hospitalization. So majority of the complications and majority of the mortality that has been seen has been in the age groups of the 40s and 50s, because that's the working class population that gets exposed more. And also the number of comorbidities start increasing in this particular age group. And the average age at which an Indian gets diabetes or a heart problem is almost a decade earlier than the American population. So probably our mortality data is not so much in the elderly, but in the 40s and 50s, because in us, the chronic illnesses set up a decade before the European and the American patients do.
That's an interesting bit of data for you, Shambhavi, to collate perhaps. But that's it for now. Thank you all of you for joining in this discussion, and thank you all for watching this. I hope you learned something, as I did actually. So thank you so much for watching this show.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.